I'm going to try to respond to a point made by Kevin today, and make this probably a pretty short one. Here's what he says. Coming from an outline way of thinking, I do find it difficult to transition to the visual order way. It feels overwhelming with all the things you need to keep track of along the way. Do you think it's best to stick with drawing until one has mastered the basics of this way of thinking before trying to do this with paint? And I answered him actually saying, yeah, you got to learn to draw. But I didn't realize he was actually asking a much simpler question than that. So his point is, he's trying to, I really appreciate, Kevin, this takes actually I don't know what you want to say, it's sort of a potential breach in your whatever success you've had in the past. You know, you're going to take a risk here to give a shot, to give a try to this way of thinking. One reason to do it, though, is that it will clarify, as I said before, it will clarify the other way. And you can then make a decision of which way is best. And I'm talking about, again, just drawing from nature, just drawing from life itself, right? So what is the best way? All right. But Kevin is giving it a shot. So as I said, I appreciate that. So do you think it's best to stick with drawing until one has mastered the basics of this way of thinking? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. And that's why I learned it, actually. I didn't figure this out in paint. I figured this out in black and white. And when I say I figured it out, by the way, again, I don't take credit. The stuff was right in front of my very eyes, and I was just looking for best practices. And I made some attempts to avoid having 30 problems, as I said before, within a half hour, have that many things that are so screwed up that how did I get that many things wrong in a painting, in a drawing? Well, it led me to the idea of visual order, right? To the idea of, first of all, what must you put down to start a painting? And the answer, of course, was you must put down the top and bottom. You have to locate the thing in the painting, right? And I noticed as soon as I put 2 points down, and by the way, already I was tuned at that point to I shouldn't say that, I might be wrong. A top and bottom for me at that point might have been just a slash and a slash, you know? Gamble used to say when you do a cast, just put about a half inch from the top, half inch from the bottom of the page and go, right? Or figure. And but I saw immediately that I said, what could I have, what could be wrong? You know, what could go wrong? I put two marks down. And I immediately saw those various things. Among other things, though, what I saw was that was a gash line. Well, the top wasn't a gash line. It was an actual piece of the skull, right? Or a piece of the skull that went down to the ear. So it was actually a shape. So I was already in a place where I'd made a mark that meant nothing. And in fact, anything was a lie, was false. There's no such thing as a flat line up there. And by the way, in the context of that idea that there's no such thing as a flat line, Gamble said to me once when I was drawing, and coming out of the construction drawing background, I would draw an angle here and an angle here, and there'd be an X here where the two met. And Gamble said, he points to me and he says, where do you see an X out there in nature? That should give you a very clear idea of how Gamble was thinking to draw, though. So we learned to actually articulate the shape right through. Right immediately on the spot, I began to do that. Well, that fed right nicely into when I looked at the head and the foot, and they were just gashes, you know, or the base. It was actually the base of that cast. So I drew the base. I drew it right around the edge of the base. I drew the shape of the foot, of the hair. And I noticed immediately the values were off in relation to those two things, that the top one should have been a little less contrasty than the bottom one. And so I adjusted the contrast of them. Oh, then I noticed that the angle was off between the two. So I adjusted that and redrew. And again, you know, you do it. I was so high at the time, and seeing how this was working already, I had no problem with just doing everything. I wanted to know how many problems I could get rid of before I moved to the third point, shall we say, or to continue a line, any which way you want to think about it. So it was all black and white, though, Kevin, just for your information, and there's so much data there. The quality of the contrast, once you put a line down, it's going to suggest a sharp edge versus a softer edge. And if there's a difference, then you'd want to show that too. Once you become a mass painter, a mass operator, right, which we really are fairly quickly, right? I certainly learned too that was going to be a best strategy too in that process, to go ahead and draw a line and actually give me a value above the skull, you know, that slightly darker value of the wall behind. and the cast shadow on the base, that value down there. And immediately something very interesting started happening. It started looking three-dimensional, though it had only 2 marks. And by the time I got to the 3rd mark, with the attempt to actually place the thing with these guys to try to get the placement on the page, by the time I went to a vertical, like it might have been the hip or a piece of the arm or something like that, that read reasonably well. By the time I got there and drew that and gave that a silhouette, I could easily see the entire figure, the whole gesture of the figure was starting to show up. Now, I'm saying all this stuff repetitively. You've heard this before. At least some of you have. But Kevin, almost all the content, short of the color and chroma, are there. And that's the argument people will say, well, because that's true, we can just neglect the others. But you can't. But although you can do this kind of drawing, and I've shown you those drawings by different individuals, Benson notably, where they're drawing to effect as opposed to drawing outlines and then noodling up the thing that looks like the nose and the eye and stuff like that. They're actually painting from the leading effects, and some of it articulates an element of the eye, and some parts a corner of a lip or a part of an ear or a part of a ribbon, some piece of the hair, and the whole essence of that. So yeah, the answer though, Kevin, is you're right exactly on the money. Just go right ahead. Take just any kind of paper. Use brown paper, the stuff you buy, stuff you buy to wrap packages in, nice smooth stuff. Use brown paper and white and black chalk, and that'll actually that'll be nothing but drawing materials, but it'll give you that idea of the full value range. You can actually get your lights, get your darks, but yeah, do skip color because that's an unnecessary burden. I would agree. So I think that's you actually realizing that there's a possibility that you can find a better way for you, a more efficient way for you, a better way for you to get success and to get clarity about how this works. So no, man, just please do that. And I hope other people understand what I'm saying. Just the visual order is a function primarily of values and of what happens where values meet. It's not entirely that, but it's hugely that. And so why not? Yeah, you're going to get most of the names of the players right there, right? So, and most of the stuff you're going to ever work with are going to be all showing up right there. So do I think it's best to stick with drawing until one's mastered the basics of this way of thinking? And another reason I say I think that you're right in trying that is because last week I had a pastel class, and because primarily this class on questioning was interested in what I was doing because of the Boston School thinking, because of the visual order conversation. So I said, just to clarify what we're talking about, let's create a simpler problem. And so I gave them the brown paper. They were basically working with still life setups that I'd put around, and with nice light effects and a variety of edges and a whole, some fairly fun stuff. And they had simply been asked to just blur their eyes way down and just draw those top 3 or 4 guys in their visual order, and just begin to realize how we place those kinds of players around and how much content you can actually correct within the first few major marks. So thank you, Kevin, and do subscribe the rest. And by the way, as I always say, Kevin, go ahead and get back to me with more fine points. But tell me how you do. I'd love to hear how you're making out as time goes by. Anyway, subscribe, comment, share. Please do share. Thank you very much, and see you in the very next one.